Today we're going to be working on my father-in-law's 1963 Porsche 356. This is Porsche's real first sports car. It is pretty much original in every aspect except for the motor. The motor, with the car being a 1963, the motor is a 1968 Porsche 912 motor. It's not much more horsepower, but it's still raspy when it up and goes. But what we're going to be doing today is working on the brakes. This car has sat for a good amount of time, and he wants to start driving it again. My goal with these brakes are to pretty much go through the entire assembly, show you how to take everything apart, what to look for, what's potentially damaged, and get this thing back to being safe on the road again. The first thing we're going to do is take out this little clamp screw and not fully remove it, just crack it loose to where we can unscrew this piece. So we're going to do that now. Okay, now that it's loose, this should be left-hand thread, so counterclockwise. One thing I forgot to mention, which I've already pulled off, is there's a cap on here, and let me grab it really quick. This cap right here is usually on here and kind of pounded in. And this right here is your speedometer, so you know how fast you're going. Oh, this usually has a little cotter pin in it. I pulled it out, so once that's in there, the piece will come through this hole, and you'll cotter pin it. It can actually rotate and show you how fast you're going. So this piece has already been done. So now what we're going to do is unscrew this piece. Now that this piece is out, set it aside. You're going to have a flat washer here that sits on top of the bearing pack. It'll be stuck to the bearing pack with all the grease, so you can just pull out the whole assembly. Just like so. Here's that washer, comes right off. See what I mean? Really greasy. I'll just keep those together, set those on a paper towel or something. And now this whole assembly should come off. One of the things that you're looking for is the condition of the inside of this drum. You're looking for rust patches, pretty much surface smoothness. You also want to make sure that you're not getting that grease on the inside, because you'll have to thoroughly clean that, because grease and trying to stop, not the best thing. So we'll set this aside. Next, what we're going to do is take out these two springs. So these springs are actually in there incorrectly. They are completely parallel with each other, but according to the user manual, this spring actually needs to be hooked onto this. So this is correct, but it needs to go here. Same thing for this side. This is correct, but it needs to go on here. So the two holes, it's the hole closest to the inside. So we're going to pop these springs out, but once these springs are out, the only thing that's going to be holding these shoes in place are these clips. So we'll go ahead and take that out right now. And these might be actually pretty tough because they're in the wrong location. These guys, you can see, it's got a little tiny, I would call it a nail with a flattened head on it. So there's a spring in between it. So what you got to do is take this flat piece, push it in towards the shoe, and twist it. And you're going to twist it until it goes into that open hole. So that's what we'll do right now. So once these are off, set them aside. This brake pad just pulls up and out. It fits inside of these two slots here, here and here. You're going to take these pieces out, and these pieces should just fall right out. So this is a two-piece assembly. This is how you adjust your brakes. So right here, there's usually a metal tab. But when this piece is in here, that metal tab goes up against these teeth here, and it goes click, 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 and it actually adjusts how much pressure it needs to push against the brake pads up against your drums. This is pretty crucial, and the whole front end of this Porsche is missing all of these metal tabs. We have new slave cylinders on order. They'll be here. So we're gonna just replace these all together. We'll pull both of these out. These boots just sit on there. I'm gonna use this little nail thing. Rubber boot should just come right off, and there's that piece. The new slave cylinder kits we ordered comes with all new everything. Now that these pieces are out, now we got to try and focus on getting the actual spring and piston assembly out of here. So you figure your brake fluid comes in through the back, and what it does is it pressurizes this chamber, pushing up against this piece, pushing on your brake pad. In order to get these out, you will need a buddy system, because what you'll have to do is pump the brakes, and that is by far the easiest way. So you pump the brakes, it's gonna drive those pistons out. That's the majority of how to disassemble these, but we're gonna go one step further and actually unmount these slave cylinders from the back, and I'll show you how to do that next after we get the piston out. Okay, so let's say you're pushing the brakes and you get one to pop out, but another one's starting to struggle. What you're gonna need to do is clamp off and block these holes. Usually people put like a piece of cardboard on top and then on the bottom, and then clamp them both together to hold that pressure in and force more pressure to the one you're trying to get to. I've seen actually on the other side of the car to where we kept pumping the brakes and it's like, man, this one's not coming out. It's not coming out. Well, come to realize it didn't have a piston in it. These pistons are still in here. I'm not going to worry about pulling them out because we're replacing both of these in general. We're just going to flip straight to the back and I'll show you how to remove these. All right, on the back side, all I did was I just rotated it to where I can access it. So you have two slave cylinders, one on the top, and keep in mind, both slave cylinders have zert fittings where you have to bleed the brakes. This one snapped off. They're the extended zert fittings that come with the car, but after 50, 60 something years, these become very brittle. If you are struggling to get these out, I strongly suggest using some PB Blaster, letting it soak, and then trying to pull it off. We need to undo this main bolt for this brake line assembly. So I'm going to hit this whole area with PB Blaster to kind of break up this grease and grime. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom here. You can see my zert fitting right here. I can try and get that off. More than likely it's going to snap because it's so old. So I'll try pull this off after spraying it with some PB Blaster. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start unscrewing this assembly. These zert fittings are 7mm. So, see, there it is. They're pretty long. Alright, so the PB Blaster's been sitting on there for about 5 minutes now, which I think is more than enough. This main bolt up on the top, it is a 17mm. And it might be a little rough, but luckily that PB Blaster just broke everything free. So you have the main bolt going through into the assembly of your brake assembly here, and then this is your actual sleeve that contains your brake fluid. By unscrewing this main bolt, it should take this whole line off. Oh, there it goes. See, this is the brake line assembly, copper tubing. When you pull this thing off, this assembly, it comes with this screw, and it has a little copper crush sleeve that goes on. It's kind of beat up, but we'll clean it up and hopefully reuse it if the new slave cylinders don't come with new hardware. But other than that, your brake line is disconnected from the top. So now we're going to break this bottom one loose. And that is also a 17 millimeter. So one thing to know with this bottom one, and I made this mistake on the other side, is when you unscrew the main assembly, it's going to start twisting your brake line. The way to get away from just twisting your line a bunch might be easier to see up here. There are 4 bolts that hold in your slave cylinder. So we're going to take those 4 bolts out. We'll start with the top one, take that out, and then we're going to take these 4 out. On the top here, by taking these 4 out, this piece should just come right out. When you take these 4 out, we're actually going to have to come around to the other side here and twist this slave cylinder off to unscrew it from this piece, if that makes sense. So like I said, we'll start with the top. All right, 10 millimeter. That's what you should be left with. This piece might be a little stuck on there. There it goes. It's all that grime and dirt and gunk, and it shouldn't unthread, it should just come right off. So now you can see exactly what I was dealing with. See, there's the broken off zert fitting right there at the bottom center, but just pushes in. When we get the new one, of course I'll clean all this up. It'll just jam on there and get held on the back. So now I will start removing the bottom one and show you the trick with that. We're gonna try and just loosen all of these screws like we did the other side. You might actually have to go to an open-end wrench. If this is cracked loose, which it is, then we could take out all of these completely. So that's what we'll do. We'll take all these out. Sorry about that glare. I just installed the new lights in the shop. I had fluorescent tubes before, but found some 180,000 lumen LED lights, so I was like, okay, you know what? It's time to convert to some better lights. Been working in a shop years now with insufficient lighting, and now I finally have it. But it is what it is. Alright, I just got 2 more. Okay, so that was the last one. There it is. You can take this off, it'll come off. So now here's my brake line, but I'm just gonna leave it in there so I know how everything's sitting. Until I get my new slave cylinders in, this is pretty much fully disassembled. All I have left to do is just get a brush and kind of get rid of all this grime and grease. All in all, it didn't take that much time. I mean, as you can see, this whole thing is completely disassembled and ready for just new components. Until next time, probably looking a week to get those parts. I will post another video on how to build everything and put it back together.